Hey guys, it's Ace Child, aka Wolfenstorm, coming at you. If, as you can probably tell, if you've been on my YouTube page anytime within the last, I would say probably a week or so, that I have changed the dynamic of my YouTube page somewhat, maybe more than somewhat. It's no longer called 80s Child, it's now called The Wolf in the Storm, because I've decided that I'm still, if you want to call me 80s Child, be my guest, because that will always be me. But for future, I'm going to move away from the 80s reviews, which I never really got started with in the first place, because I've realized it's too costly for me to get a hold of 80s memorabilia at this point. So I wanted to really move firmly onto something else, which I am equally as passionate about, especially now considering the state of things. That would be, obviously, if you've seen the picture on my YouTube channel, it's Doctor Who. Um, Now, I know all of you have various differing opinions on Doctor Who. Some of you enjoy the direction that Chris Chibnall has sent the show in. You enjoy Jodie Whittaker as the first female Doctor. You enjoy the companions and the storylines, and there are others of you that violently hate it. Um, I'm not one to mince words when it comes to Doctor Who because it's a show and a fan base that I'm very passionate about. So, if you've watched any of my other videos recently, you'll see that I don't mince words when it comes to this. So I was hunting around online for some Doctor Who articles in various websites, and I found two websites that have a good chunk of Doctor Who articles, but these are ones that I have not yet seen other people do videos of. I didn't want to be repetitive, and do videos other people have done. So I found a couple on Digital Spy and a couple on Sci-Fi Wire. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, the shit that comes out of Sci-Fi Wire, I don't really take with a grain of salt because most of it is opinion pieces. And quite a bit of the writers on that site don't really watch, at least in my opinion, don't really watch the shows that they're writing opinions about, or at least only watch it just enough just so they can write an article and get paid. A lot of these clickbait sites are kind of the same way, so I have to be really careful about what I'm looking at. I try to find the ones that are less opinion-based and more like actual interviews, but it's hard to do unless you're going on a, like, for real site. So the first article I have is from Digital Spy. The first couple ones are short, the last couple ones are a bit longer. But this one actually has to do with Steven Moffat. Now, this article is entitled, Former Doctor Who Showrunner Steven Moffat Defends Series 12 Finale's Controversial Doctor Twist. In quotations, Doctor Who never fits. Okay, so I know if any of you guys have seen the last video that I posted about Doctor Who, the dumpster fire, you with unabashed enthusiasm understand my position on the new season, new direction, what Chibnall's done, the iteration of the Doctor, and how I virulently dislike it. So it doesn't surprise me that Steven Moffat would support it. It's Moffat, he's not going to want to get onto Chibnall's bad side, or worse yet, on the bad side of the BBC, because he's still in the industry. And if he shit talks the BBC and what they've allowed to happen, and if he shit talks Chibnall, who's on the biggest show that the BBC has right now, even though the ratings are crap, it will seriously hamper his ability to get work in the future. So you can understand why he is willing to pretty much shill for them no matter what. But with Moffat, don't forget, Moffat is the one that started in this direction of answering the unanswerable questions. So he just, by what he started with his crazy epic end of season or overall season arcs, is what pretty much gave Chibnall the license to pull this shit. So Well, let's go on to the next here. Former Doctor Who showrunner Stephen Moffat has spoken out about the recent Series 12 finale twist. Okay, I'm just going to put a codicil in here that most of these articles are from like back in March, so I don't think I need to put spoiler warnings in here since, I mean, it's now June. If you haven't seen it, that's not really my problem, it's yours. Which proved to be somewhat divisive among fans. The Timeless Children saw the Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, hashtag not my doctor, discovered that she had a whole load of previous incarnations that we were unaware of. Though some argued that it opened up a big plot hole in the timeline. Big plot hole? Big? I think plot hole ginormous enough to drive a fucking TARDIS through. That doesn't jive with previous 57 years worth of fucking history. However, Moffat has now defended the storyline, telling Radio Times who says what's canon. One episode, the show says that William Hartnell is the first Doctor. Another episode, he's not. Okay. Number one, it's not one episode that says that William Hartnell's the Doctor. It's 57 years worth of history that says that William Hartnell is the first Doctor. And even though some showrunners were better than others, yeah, I'm talking to you, showrunner for 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors. Even they would not be so self-righteous enough to fuck with that kind of canon. Period. Yes, I know sometimes Doctor Who plays fast and loose with the facts. And some of the canon is wibbly-wobbly. But this particular part of the canon, absolutely not. That is something that no showrunner who is self-respecting would fuck with. Except for Moffat in some ways, and Chibnall because he figures, why should I care? I'm God, right? Pointing out previous plot holes, the writer continued, the big plot hole that no one ever remembers is in the 1966 episode, The Power of the Daleks. Just to get nerdy. The Doctor talks as if he's done this before. The first time it happens, he wanders around that first episode behaving as if, oh, my old body wore out, I got a new one. He does not behave as if it's his first time. And later on, it's retconned into the idea that it was the first time, but that doesn't fit. Okay, I will admit I'm not a classic Who watcher, so I don't know if this is from first Doctor or second Doctor. So I don't know how accurate that this is, but considering it's coming from Moffat and he's a massive Who nerd, you know, I have to believe that he at least knows what he's talking about in that respect. But okay, first of all, The Power of the Daleks, I know for a fact is one of the episodes that got lost in the archives because it was taped over. So, which happened to quite a few of the older ones. So, I kind of look at that with a grain of salt because you're kind of drifting into subtext territory here. He's talking about the way that the Doctor was acting, not actual things that he said. Subtext is very different than actual, like, spoken verbal. This comes from God on high canon. I really, really hate it when people venture into subtext land. Because subtext, by virtue of the word, is very subconscious. And it's in the eye of the beholder. So one person could look at it and see one thing, and another person could look at it and see something totally different. So yeah, I look at that with a grain of salt. Doctor Who never fits. He added, none of it fits together. If you really look at it, why would it? It's made by teams and teams of different people who never ever met. So I'm perfectly happy with all that. It's great fun. Meanwhile, Moffat has also addressed the chances of him returning to write for the series, and they don't sound great. I think that Doctor Who has to change hands and have new creators, new people involved. He said, and remember, I wrote a ton of episodes. I think I'm out of ideas. I don't have a single one left. Thank God. Yes, I know that the show has had different show runners, different directors and producers, different writers, and different actors. That's how the show works. That's why it stayed on for as long as it had. But another one of the reasons why the show has been able to progress the way that it has and has been able to stay on television as long as it has is because it keeps to that canon. If every show runner that came along decided, okay, I don't care what this other asshole did, fuck this shit, and wipe the whole slate clean and put in a whole new set of rules, I can guarantee you the show wouldn't have lasted as long as it did because no one would have been able to follow it. It would have been so confusing and so fucked up that no one would have taken the time to give a shit. Because the show runners had the decency and the brains and the forethought to keep the very important cornerstones of the show canon and unchanged throughout the 57-year history. Again, like Moffat and Chibnall, all of them are so fond of saying, you could literally jump right in at any point within the show's given history and not feel like you missed anything. Because the canon is that strict. I know parts of his history have come and gone, and there are definite questions about who he is and how long he's been alive, and does he have a human mother like in the movie or whatever? Was he born? Was he loomed? There's always been questions, but there have never been definitive answers, and that is for a reason. The Doctor must stay a mystery, must at all costs. The character is supposed to be ambiguous. If the character is not ambiguous, if all of his questions are answered and all of his mysteries are solved, what the hell is the point of watching the show? You're wanting us to come back time and time again to see this crazy eccentric man who flies around in a blue box, saving universes and planets with his friends. But why would we bother if we had no questions to ask, if there was no mystery about him whatsoever? If we knew what his real name was, we knew where he was born, we knew who his parents were, we knew every single question about him and every single answer, what would keep us coming back? You can only have so many planets to save and so many alien races to meet and so many historical figures to freaking see. After a while, people are going to stop giving a shit. You can only take that so long. That mystery and that ambiguousness is what draws people in continuously and what has allowed this show to continue for 57 years, because people will never know who he is, but they will always come back to watch to see if they can figure it out. But now that there's nothing to fucking figure out, because of the Timeless Child, apparently, what's the point? All right. The next article, Doctor Who boss solves plot hole with brand new story. Quote, the Doctor looked up mid-plummet. Oh dear, she thought. This is also from Digital Spy, and it's detailing a sort of a lockdown story. Like, you know how the last couple months, a lot of the old Doctor Who writers have come down and penned lockdown stories, like their additions to episodes to flesh out more plots and things like that. They did it recently with David Tennant for New Earth. Russell T Davies wrote a continuation of Rose, having to do with the nesting consciousness. They've written a continuation for Family of Blood, which is shit. They've written a continuation for Girl in the Fireplace. Just stuff to keep people watching. Well, Chibnall has decided to write a continuation for The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Like, we need any more of this crap. To kind of, I suppose, explain a plot hole, a very gaping plot hole. Because if you remember at the beginning of the episode, falls out of the TARDIS, like tens of thousands of feet in the sky, down to Earth, and lands in a train. Which is how she meets Graham and Ryan and Yaz. And eventually that alien creature, Tim Shaw. So a lot of the fans were questioning how she could have survived falling from that great distance. Because if you remember in the episode Impossible Planet in season 2, David Tennant's Doctor 10, when he was looking down into that shaft, after they had made it down to the inner workings of the planet, when he was looking down in that big hole, he was wondering whether or not he should go down there, because he couldn't tell how deep it was. It was completely pitch black. It didn't look like there was any ending, any ground that he could see. So he had to calculate in his head how far he could fall justifiably without getting hurt, or dying and then having to regenerate. And I remember plainly him saying he could probably go about 30 feet safely without, killing himself. Because even though he's a Time Lord and can regenerate, that doesn't mean that he can't die. His body can still be broken. Trust me, if the man gets hit by a bus, he gonna die. Just like if he falls from a fucking building, he gonna die. He might come back later, but he's still gonna die. So she was tens of thousands of feet in the air from a distance where you could safely be on an airplane in flight. And she fell out of the TARDIS and landed in the train. And people were like, how could she not be dead? So this kind of tries to solve that little... And I know this doesn't seem like a very significant piece of news, but there's a part here that is interesting to me. It would be easy to explain away any Doctor Who plot hole or inconsistency with wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, but current series showrunner Chris Chibnall, has provided a more thorough explanation for one of the show's more puzzling events. To help get the nation through the current countrywide lockdown, Chibnall has written a brand new story as a little present for people and families stuck at home together. Dude, nobody wants to hear anything more from you at all other than when you're leaving, honestly. Titled Things She Thought While Falling. As if anybody cares. The short story reveals exactly what the Doctor was thinking as she fell through the sky and crashed into an unsuspecting train carriage in Jodie Whittaker's first ever full episode, The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Lord. Revealing everything from the Doctor's inner thoughts on drifting pronouns. Right there. Drifting pronouns. To what Sheffield's atmosphere tastes like. Chibnall's story also reveals why plummeting at speed into a train didn't seriously injure 13. Train might be better. The roof, if she could crash through it, would soften her landing a bit, though smashing through was most likely going to hurt a lot. This story reads. Now, honestly, I don't really give a shit about his reasoning as to why she can crash through that thing and not die. Whatever. He's played so fast and loose with shit that... But drifting pronouns? Okay. With a bit of luck, any injuries would be taken care of by the still fizzing regeneration process. Well, no shit. Didn't really need an explanation for that. Everybody's known that since back in season fucking 2 with the Sycorax. Like those injuries the Doctor got after he crashed through the roof of the Naismith Manor, which was in Journey's End. Or the hand he'd managed to grow back after the Sycorax had chopped one off in the Christmas Invasion. Yeah. We already understand why he can do that. Why he or she was able to do that. Because if they're within the first 15 hours of the regeneration cycle, the body's still repairing itself. Didn't really need an explanation. It was just kind of unnecessary. Watch out, Doctor, she thought. Your personal pronouns are drifting. Seriously. Because she starts out using the pronoun he, describing his 10th self in those two occurrences. And she's a she. Drifting? Are you trying to, disavow the fact that your previous regenerations are male? Have you gotten to the point, seriously, in your social justice bullshit, that you don't even want to acknowledge the 12 doctors that came before you? Because they're male? Oh, go fuck yourself. Please go fuck yourself. So there you have it. The regeneration process has its perks. Those Time Lords get all the luck. Don't they? You can read the Doctor's monologue as she journeyed to Earth in full on the BBC website. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that alone, and you can take from that what you will. But, ugh. All right. Next up, those were the Digital Spy articles. This is from sci-fi.com, Sci-Fi Wire. Doctor Who boldly goes with a choice that defines the franchise. Fuck me. Yep. Brave and bold. Stunningly brave and bold. Stunning and brave! When Chibi took over Doctor Who in 2018, his tenure started. Okay, before I keep going, these are opinion pieces straight off the bat. So before I even get into this mess, you know that these are opinion pieces, and you can tell. You'll be able to tell as we go further in the articles that the people who wrote these don't really know their Doctor Who history and are just quoting other shit that has been put online. When Chibi took over Doctor Who in 2018, his tenure started with a soft reboot of the series, as most usually happens when a new showrunner comes. Since the show's 2006 return, every showrunner begins by introducing a new Doctor and companions. But Chibnall went much further. He brought entire found family, Ryan, Yaz, and Graham. But the new showrunner didn't just refresh the characters, he also took the series back to its roots. Oh boy, here we go. After a decade and a half of season-long arcs, Season 11 was the first to be nothing but standalone stories, a throwback to the show's original format from the 1960s. Stories set in the past were history lessons. Those set in the future focus on scientific developments of today and notably climate change. Okay. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that the history lessons aspect of the original Doctor Who that Sidney Newman and Verity started up back in '63 only lasted a couple of weeks before they threw that shit out because nobody wanted to see it. I'm not saying that they didn't have episodes where they went back to the past and saw historical figures or went, back to historical timelines, but like the literal teaching shit, yeah, nobody wanted that. They wanted to be entertained and they wanted to have fun, which you still want now. Thank you very much. Climate change. Look, I'm a social justice person more than just as much as anybody else, but I don't like it in my sci-fi, not unless it's subtle. But most radically, Chibi is using his time to articulate long-held Doctor Who philosophies, putting into words what fans have long taken as unspoken principles, including the importance of the individual and the belief that art is one of humanity's greatest creations and influences. The latest of these instances came during Season 12, Episode 8, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. After being warned by Captain Jack Harkness that when the lone Cyberman showed up, she should not let it have what it wants, the Doctor realized the decision wasn't going to be so easy. What the lone Cyberman wanted was the Cyberium, a vast repository of data from which this race of cyborgs could be resurrected, an insurance policy against galaxy-wide defeat. But the liquid substance that held their nanotechnology had been accidentally absorbed by Percy Shelley. Yes, that Percy Shelley, the one who wrote Prometheus Unbound, Queen Mab, Ozymandias, and other works of poetry considered to be among the greatest in any language. The fastest way to get the substance out of Shelley was to let the Cyberman have what he wanted, with the Doctor letting one of the greatest poets who ever lived die before producing his most celebrated works. Confronted with this untenable situation, Ryan spoke up for making the hard choice, letting Shelley die to keep the Cyberman from being able to resurrect it. It was a classic, the good of the many outweighs the needs of the few argument. It was also the first time in the show's history that the Doctor was confronted in plain language by this philosophy, made famous by the other 50-plus-year-old sci-fi franchise, Star Trek, even if Trek didn't necessarily adhere to the philosophy. Without missing a beat, the Doctor rejected such an answer out of hand. Okay, first of all, I'm going to give that one a big fuck off, because it is not the first time in the 50-plus-year franchise that he's ever, or she has ever been confronted with this. He's actually been confronted with it quite a few times. Most notably in End of Time Part 2, when Wilf was stuck in that glass chamber. And he had to decide whether or not to let Wilf die. Because Wilf was just a normal guy, nothing special. Or leave and save his own life. Because a Time Lord is more important, than a human being, right? But he did it anyway. He saved Wilf's life, because that's what the Doctor does. Sacrifice himself. Yes, he knew he would regenerate, but he did it anyway. Don't fucking sit there and tell me that he's never dealt with this kind of issue before. Because, oh yes, he has. So fucking many times. I can't even tell you. Let's not forget what happened in season 3 with the Dalek human Gallifreyan hybrids. He had a choice to make. Kill them all, because they shouldn't be alive anyway, or find a place for them to live somewhere where they can be at peace. The Doctor has so many times had to make difficult choices. Oh my god! The whole fucking special Waters of Mars was about this very fucking issue! Holy shit! The fact that he had to make a decision. He was there at Bowie Base 1, and he didn't even realize it until later on in the episode, just when in time he was, and the fact that it was a fixed point. And the entire episode was him, his inner guilt eating away at him so badly to want to save these people because he knew what was going to happen to them. He knew they were all going to die. And he was the sole one that had the power to save them, to get them off that base and bring them to safety. But he couldn't do it because he knew if he did, it would change history completely. Because what happened at Bowie Base 1 directly resulted in the children and grandchildren of those people being inspired to take Earth to the stars. If he saved their lives too early, it would completely wreck the fabric of space and time. The guilt ate away at him so profusely that by the end of this episode, he fucking lost his shit. He literally couldn't cope and became the Time Lord victorious. He spiraled so deeply and so badly that he got to a point where he believed that the laws of time should bend for him and him alone. Get it? The needs of the many, needs of the few, or the one? What was more important? Earth's and humanity's time stream and what was going to happen with them in the future, or the lives of this small group of people? Yeah. I think he's been confronted with them more than one time. It was that very episode that caused him to spiral so badly it led directly into End of Time Part 1 and 2, and the decision he made to save Wilf's life. Don't fucking tell me that he's never been through this before. For the Doctor to outright reject such ruthless and cold logic, swatting it down with such emotional force that Ryan looked abashed, should not come as a surprise. Doctor Who has never been a show that concerned itself with the many. It's a series about the individual, how each person is an essential part of a greater tapestry, even if they never know it. I'll give it that. The actions of one person can make a difference if they're just willing to take a stand. As the 11th Doctor once said, in 900 years of time and space, I've never met anyone who wasn't important. Killing one person in order to save the theoretical billions is foolish because that one could go on to change the world. Exactly. I will give her that. She does have that correct. And as the Doctor points out, Percy Shelley's writings do change the world for the better. The Mask of Anarchy, which contemplated the effectiveness of nonviolent resistance, inspired Tolstoy, who inspired Gandhi, who in turn inspired Martin Luther King. His work influenced generations of poets all the way into the 20th century. He also encouraged those around him, like his wife, Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, and John Polidori, who invented the entire vampire genre with 1819's The Vampire, telling him, right, you're welcome. Without him, the present as we know it today would not exist, which means we would not exist. Our world as it is because Shelley's writings helped push it in this direction and inspired others to make it that way. Small note about Percy Shelley, though. He didn't really inspire his wife to write Frankenstein. Yeah, no, he really didn't. He was a fucking asshole who stepped out on her multiple times, lived most of his life when he was a poet, drunk off his ass with Lord Byron, and pretty much left his wife to suffer after their child died. The reason why she wrote Frankenstein, she came up with that idea on her own. And he never really encouraged her to write. He didn't think that she was in any way, shape, or form even close to being able to write the way he could write. And yet she outdid him with that book. in one swoop. Just saying. That book was written from a place of profound grief after she had lost her son, and her wanting to find some way to deal with it and cope with it, with that desperate need to have him back, but not being able to have him back. Moreover, the Doctor's argument as to why letting Percy Shelley die would be wrong also encapsulates how much the series has always believed in the importance of art and artists. Science fiction has rarely stopped to consider the importance of art, even before the rise of STEM and the common belief that those shaping the future of tomorrow are those who focus on technology. Star Wars, for instance, rarely considers the importance of writings and philosophy. I'm sorry, what? Not to veer off on a tangent about Star Wars, but the entire thing about the Force is fucking philosophy, okay? Yoda even burned the Jedi tomes as dull. Notably, Star Trek is one of the few franchises that just does stop to remind us that art is what makes us human. But most major franchises don't have the time to consider art. Characters are too busy running either toward or away from mortal danger. Doctor Who manages to combine the running and the philosophy. Entire adventures take the time to visit artists and writers, influential visionaries, who the show holds up as some of the most important people in history. Not just the Shelleys in this episode, but Vincent van Gogh, Agatha Christie, William Shakespeare, and Charles Dickens, just to name a few who've turned up since the 2005 reboot. And we're all done in much better fucking episodes. Yeah. Unquiet Dead, Shakespeare Code, Unicorn and the Wasp, Vincent. Yeah. The 10th Doctor called books the best weapons in the world, and a library the greatest arsenal we could have. Firearms are a temporary, immediate solution. Words, especially when written down, can help humans envision a better world for centuries. The old days when episodes were actually fucking decent. But the series doesn't just argue save the poet, save the world as an abstract. By laying out what the show stands for and letting the Doctor articulate these beliefs in ways that cannot be ignored, the series is essentially practicing what it preaches. Viewers have accepted that this belief in art over science, heart over head, is a core tenet of the series. But as the show passes from hand to hand over the coming decades, it won't always be assured that the next showrunner will stay true to these sentiments. By writing it down the same way Shelley wrote his own thoughts down, Chibnall is looking to influence the future. One person can make a difference, be it a 19th century poet or a 21st century showrunner, so long as they put their minds to it. Yeah, I suppose. There's quite a bit of art that's infused through Doctor Who, as long as it's done right. Every episode is artistic in its own way, as long as it's done properly. I mean, the design of the aliens, the planets, all of it is artistic in its own way. It doesn't necessarily have to be just the historical characters. Again, it has to be done properly, though. If it's not done properly, then it's just boring. And it sucks. Like this particular episode that she's talking about. Yeah, the part with the Cyberman was interesting, but it all goes to shit by the next episode anyway, so it's kind of like you had a really good character to focus on that they could have used for a great finale, and then they kind of took a shit on him in the next 2 episodes, and he went nowhere. Well, unless you count becoming a little tiny doll. Alright, next article. The evolution of women in Doctor Who. Okay, this is going to be a bit insane, but here we go. This article actually started out really good, extolling the virtues of the companions, and then kind of veered into social justice warrior territory towards the end. So, we'll see. We open high above the earth, distant and still. Quickly we zoom in, settling on an alarm clock and a girl. She gets out of bed, heads off to work at Henrik's in London, and changes the world. When Doctor Who returned in 2005, 16 years after its cancellation, it returned with its focus not on the titular Doctor, but the girl, Rose. Like Susan Foreman in Doctor Who's original first episode in 1963, An Unearthly Child, this girl is where we begin. She's our introduction to the Doctor, to this world of so many worlds. The show is Doctor Who, but the episode and the season-long arc that would follow is Rose. And so began the modern Doctor Who series and the heroic female characters that were much more than the common term that defined them for so long. companions. Okay, that's a good intro so far. The women of Who have always been important, often the best parts of their tenures. Iconic heroes like Sarah Jane Smith, Ace, Tegan, and Jo Grant would set the gold standard for the ones that followed, endlessly loyal but brave and heroic in their own right, not simply damsels to be saved. In the 15 years since the reboot launch, the artists formerly known as Companions have been as crucial to the series as its title character. Rose Tyler, Billie Piper, Martha Jones, Freema Agyeman, Donna Noble, Catherine Tate, Amy Pond, Karen Gillan, Claire Oswald, Jenna Coleman, and Bill Potts. Pearl Mackie traveled not by his side, but often in front, saving him as much as he saved them. I'll agree with that. While Rose was a partner to the Doctor in terms of traveling and saving the universe, their connection was also undeniably romantic. First subtextually, and then thanks to Journey's End straight-up canonical text. I wouldn't really say it was subtextually, because it was right in your fucking face for most of the first 2 seasons of the show. Actually, it flowed through all 4 seasons up until 10 left. But anyway, when Martha came along after Rose's exit, she had big shoes to fill and a broken heart she could never mend. Very true. For better or for worse, Martha's time on the show had the ghost of Rose looming over her. For some fans, it did the character a disservice, something Agyeman agrees with to some extent. I mean, yeah, we got stuck down the unrequited love storyline, which did jar me a little bit because it started out with so much potential and then we got stuck. Agyeman told us when we spoke to her at the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con, but for showrunner Russell T. Davies, it was just a drop of reality in an otherwise fantastical world. I know he was trying to lend a bit of a dose of reality to Ten's heartbreak. I get it. But I just think it's true. It did a disservice to her because she was a great companion and she's a great person. And she didn't deserve to be... Well, I won't say that he let her on because I don't believe that he did. A lot of people think he did. I don't. I think he just wasn't firm enough in making sure she understood where the boundaries were. If he had been a bit more firm, it probably would have gone better. He just wasn't firm enough with her. And he did sometimes say things that could be construed as hurtful. But he didn't realize that she felt that way. Not initially. And, you know him. He's awkward when it comes to that, human emotions and things. His whole world was Rose. She will always be. And it was hard for him to see beyond that. I spoke to Davies about this whole journey with Martha, and he said more people will probably be able to identify with unrequited love than they will reciprocate it, and he just wanted to make her seem more identifiable. I guess, but he also made her seem kind of whiny, like she was always pissed off at Rose, and she didn't even know who Rose was. She was just, anytime he even brought up her name, she, But again, I think this is chalked up to, again, that the Doctor was not firm with her and didn't really explain why he felt the way he felt and why he couldn't be that for her that she wanted him to be. Agyeman told fangirls, and it isn't always a fairy tale. Life is hard. You don't get the fairy tale ending, but you do get you. And as long as you can, you have the courage of your convictions and you can stand up and keep your head up. It's not going to be an easy ride. You're going to fall and have your heart broken and have your gut punched. But that's just life. And I think that she was able to go full circle and refine her strength and herself and progress. Yes, absolutely. She became amazing. For the Martha Jones Defense Squad, this is the defining aspect of the character, not determined by her predecessor or her feelings for the Doctor. Agyeman understands that, and the fans who love the character. It's fascinating to me when I meet Martha fans because they're definitely a certain type of person, and I'm totally down with that. They get it. So that's great. She said, and when I kind of described Martha and the Doctor in that relationship, I do feel like her life was sorted. She had a plan. She was this caretaker. She was going to medical school. She had her right flat. The Doctor coming in her life wasn't so much about her. It wasn't about offering her an escape from her world. She liked her world, whereas I definitely feel with Rose, she was drifting a bit lost or looking for something and found this adventure on another level and love and discovered so much. Yes, that's what made them different. Martha had feelings for him, but she didn't need him the way Rose did. She had her family. She had a medical school. She was going to become a doctor. She had her own flat. She had her own life. She was just as content being on solid ground as she was being in space. But Rose, her entire world became wrapped up in him because in her mind she had nothing else. She had the flat where she lived with her mom, but it was a life she didn't want. It was like she never felt right in her own skin. She never felt whole on solid ground. She only felt whole when she was with him, which is what makes their relationship different. The most ultimately defining aspect of Martha Jones as a character, what makes her so powerful and important to those who adore her, is that she walked away. In a show where the doctors left so many and lost so much, Martha chose to leave. Yeah, she had the strength to walk away. Yes, it hurt, and it took time for her to get over him, but the point was, she had that inner strength. And she had the ability to live without him. She loved being with him and loved traveling with him, but she didn't need him to make her life complete. She could walk away. I've had so many people say to me, thank you for that. They were like, I was in a position or a circumstance in my life or a relationship where I just was stuck, and it gave me the courage to do something, Ajiman told Fangirls. I definitely feel that with Martha. She was grounded. She was sorted. He came along, offered her a new perspective on life, and ultimately she chose to return to her original. She's fine. She's okay. And I certainly enjoyed the time. And I just think that she, badass as she is, and it's incredible that sometimes actually people have written to me on social media and said, we didn't see it then, but now we do. Yeah, a lot of fans either couldn't accept her because they couldn't deal with Rose being gone. And I will admit, loving Rose the way that I do, it was hard at first. That doesn't mean I didn't accept her. I absolutely did. But I still miss Rose, and I will always miss Rose. Rose is my girl. I mean, I'm a Dr. Rose fangirl, so of course I'm going to miss Rose. But I know that part of her is never going to be gone from the TARDIS or from his heart. I wasn't worried about him forgetting her because he never ever will. But people really didn't give her the benefit of the doubt. Like they just felt like she was a replacement or a rebound, and that didn't feel right to me. So maybe think if she came at a different time as well, that she may have been received differently. Yeah, it's true. If Donna had come first and then Martha, things might have been different. But, story reasons. After Martha came Donna Noble, who stood out from day one by being wholly unafraid to knock the Doctor down a peg. Her exit was as devastating as her friendship with the Doctor was special. Whereas Martha chose to leave, Donna had everything taken from her. Her memories of the time she was important, something she'd never felt before. And that is what made it so heartbreakingly sad. She wasn't just losing her memories of everything that she'd experienced, but she was losing this version of who she was as a person. She could never go back to that Donna ever again. She'd become so incredible as a result of her relationship with the Doctor, and she'd grown so much. It was so sad to see that just stolen away from her so unjustly. Amy Pond, meanwhile, blended the line of Martha's self-assuredness with Donna's take-no-shit attitude toward the Doctor while still being entirely her own unique character. But for Gillen, she found Amy in the darker aspects of the character. For Amy, it was abandonment, being a little girl who didn't have very many present family members, Gillen told Fangirls. Then this magical man falls out of the sky, but then he leaves her. And so everything stemmed from these abandonment issues, and then that informed her defense mechanisms, her strong personality. All of these things are her sense of independence. Women in the modern series have operated beyond the classic companion mold, both as co-travelers and as adversaries, allies, and even lovers. Yes, this is true. Very true. River's song. Oh, I hope I didn't skip too much now, did I? River's song was his match in every way. Okay. I'm not going to argue about this because it would take a whole entire video for me to argue about River's song. Scrappy, sassy, sexy, and staunch. Yeah, okay, whatever. Missy, Michelle Gomez, was the first female iteration of the Master, and where River was his equal, Missy was his chaotic other half, a human bomb exploding onto the series and throwing the Doctor's universe into disarray, into ultimately forming a warm, albeit uneasy, alliance and bond far different from her previous male incarnations. Okay, See? Now, this is what you have to understand. I had no problem with Missy as the master at all. I didn't particularly care for the overarching storylines that involved her because I didn't think that they were very well written. But Missy herself as the master, great character. Michelle Gomez did an amazing job. And that's chalked up to excellent writing and excellent acting. Did I ever once say that I didn't like the fact that she was a female? Nope. I didn't give a shit that the master was a female. I mean, granted, my favorite master will always be John Sim. That's just me because that's my personal opinion. But that doesn't mean I don't think that Missy was just as good. Because she was. And it didn't matter to me that she was a woman. The writing supported it. Her acting chops and her ability to flesh out that character and be the master supported it. There was undeniably a sort of kinship there, born out of the fact, I think, that Peter and I share a sort of cultural history together. Gomez told Fangirls. We both grew up in Glasgow. We both grew up with the same cultural references. We had a real shorthand there that was always kind of textual, I suppose, and the warmth was there. The warmth was that Peter and I, we fit really well, and we also brought a dynamic to the Doctor, which I truly believe. First of all, I believe that he could be a doctor. I also believe that he was flawed and torn, often between his best self and his worst self, and in spite of himself, he would save people. To be the newest person to portray an iconic villain is daunting enough, but for Gomez, the gender shift brought with it a greater weight, one that arguably opened the door for the ultimate evolution of women in Doctor Who, the first female Doctor, Jodie Whittaker. Again, I wouldn't have cared that the Doctor was a woman as long as the writing and the acting ability was there to back it up. I think perhaps I could maybe take some credit that I paved the way, but I think it was only just a matter of time that we were going to have a female Doctor, regardless of the fact that I was the first female master. Gomez said humbly, it was down to the fact that Jodie was absolutely the best person for the job when it came to recasting the new Doctor. Was she? Was she really? Nah. But maybe I made it seem a little more palatable, perhaps. Yeah. In 2017, when Whittaker was announced as the 13th Doctor, more changed than the character's gender. The whole dynamic was different. No longer companions, the Doctor had friends. A femme. They were equals. Sally de St. Croix, franchise director, BBC Studios for Doctor Who, explained the purpose of the shift to Fangirls. The use of the word femme, or family, is to acknowledge the tight-knit group of companions that accompany the Doctor. She said, because those you love and keep close and consider family may not always be blood relatives. Okay. You, Miss Sally, can go fuck right the fuck off. The whole reason I chose this article was primarily for this paragraph right here. Bitch, you can fuck the fuck off. Seriously. You think the Doctor's never had a family? I'm not talking about family from Gallifrey, but you think that his companions before the 13th Doctor he didn't consider family? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you leaving out that line that Sarah Jane said to him during End of Time, or during Journey's End, when she said, for someone who claims to be so alone, you have the biggest family in the universe? Or that whole scene when they were towing the Earth back? And how incredibly amazing it was to see all of those companions around him with smiles on their faces and laughing and having fun. All of those people, those were his family. Those were his family. Jackie, Mickey, Rose, Martha, Donna, Jack, Sarah Jane. That was his family. And as a matter of fact, because the other companions were so isolated prior to this, in the New Who ethos, it was the first time that the Doctor actually had like a real family dynamic on the TARDIS. Because in the past, once the companions left, they didn't usually come back unless it was for a special or something. Most of the time, they didn't. Unless you count 5 Doctors, but that was a one-off. But this, in New Who, you would constantly see old companions come back. Sarah Jane, Jack, Martha, Rose. Because they were considered his family. Do not fucking tell me that this is the first instance of her having a fam. You can go fuck the fuck right off. Fuckity bye, as Malcolm says. This was a new layer to the show, as gender, age, power, and myriad other differences created an imbalance between the Doctor and his companion. Okay, yes, I know. Age, power, gender, sometimes depending on when they went. I know that there was issues. But as time wore on and the show became more modern, the companions became more his equal than they did just companions. And that definitely started with Rose on out. He had partners in his various quests, but he was the leader, the smartest one in the room, the one in charge. Not always. Yes, he's usually the smartest one in the room, but sometimes his ego gets the better of him. And sometimes his companions figure shit out before he does. And it didn't fucking start with her. Yaz, Mandeep Gill, Ryan Tosin Cole. Okay, with Whittaker, the Doctor and her family established a team dynamic. Yaz, Mandeep Gill, Ryan Tosin Cole, and Graham Bradley Walsh have a relationship with the Doctor that is on a more equivalent plane than previous incarnations. Huh? The power structure is more level. Huh? The Doctor is still the Doctor, but she's no longer the last remaining Time Lord who only had himself in the world. Yeah, still is. Still is. They don't have a more even level. No, because they don't do anything. They just fucking sit there, and she does everything. Did you not notice the way Chibnall has framed the way the series has gone? That it's all about her, and the three of them just kind of tag along behind, like her little chickies. They don't do shit. They just sit there and stroke her ego. They don't call her on her shit. Hardly ever. The Doctor's still the Doctor, but she's no longer alive. Okay, blah, blah, blah. This Doctor is clinging to and grasping for hope, and that's not something one can do alone. You act like this is the first time that he's ever, or she has ever had to do this. Why do you guys always act like nothing else came before this? Or, I don't know, maybe it's because, when you decide to write this opinion piece, you haven't actually watched the other seasons of the show prior to this? You think? And with equal footing comes her friend's ability to disagree casually as opposed to a difference of opinion on being a major narrative moment. This is most clear with Yaz by design. And there was a conversation with showrunner Chris Chibnall. Gil told Fangirls he asked me what I'd like to see, and I said, you know what, I think sometimes Yaz wouldn't agree with the Doctor. I believe in the Doctor. I still believe in the Doctor, but Yaz has learned a lot in space, and she trusts herself and believes in herself as much as she believes in the Doctor. I do definitely seem to remember companions before them calling the Doctor on his shit. Abso-fucking-lutely. And disagreeing, not by design, but because they knew he was fucking wrong. And they weren't gonna let him get away with it. The queen of disagreement is Donna fucking Noble, bitch. Trust that. Please. Please. Like any evolution, it continues. We learned this season that the 13 Doctors, 14 counting John Hurt's War Doctor, what we know, are, as the face of Bo once said, not alone. Before the first Doctor, William Hartnell, there were others. Her first iteration was, in fact, a little girl. Stunning and brave. Just stunning and brave. As with all of Doctor Who's beginnings, it starts with a girl. Are you talking about Verity Lambert? I hope you're talking about Verity. Somehow I don't think you are, but I'd like to hope you are. Because this revelation gave us Jo Martin as the first black person of any gender to play the Doctor. Science fiction's most beloved and longest-running television show can go anywhere from here. And the TARDIS doors are open wider than ever before. With that, of course, came a backlash. The casting of Jodie Whittaker was met with controversy by self-professed fans of the show, as long as the Doctor was played by a cisgender man, apparently. This is both jarring and sadly predictable, even to the show stars. Okay. I'm not going to disagree with the fact that there were some neckbeards that were generally just misogynistic assholes. But the majority of the divisiveness in the fandom came after they actually got to see Jodie on screen and watch her as the Doctor and saw with their own eyeballs how much she fucking sucks in the role and how much Chibnall fucking sucks as a writer. It doesn't have anything to do with her being a female. We could literally care less. As a matter of fact, a lot of fans, after they saw Fugitive of the Judoon, had said how much they loved the performance of Jo Martin and that she would have been a much better choice to play another Doctor instead of Jodie. That if we could have had her, we would not have had a problem with it. She was fucking phenomenal. Because her acting ability, her ability to stand out and prove herself as a Doctor, even in only just a few scenes that she had, her outfit, her personality, her influence on screen, and the writing backed it up. Jodie doesn't have that. She has never once made the Doctor her own. She steals lines and personality quirks from other Doctors, most notably from Tennant and Smith. She's never once attempted to make the Doctor her own. There's nothing that sets her Doctor apart from any other. And the writing that she's stuck with is abysmal. It's preachy. It's social justice garbage that nobody wants in this fucking show. And it has completely ruined canon. Completely. For every step I think we're taking forward, you get a bit blindsided by a response that was quite possibly you didn't anticipate, G-Man said, because I was like, well, of course it's about time. It should have happened a long, long, long time ago. And some of the responses really made me gag, so I'm very proud to have been a part of shows that pioneer movements. Now, see, I almost willing to bet that when she's saying some of the responses made me gag, this is taken out of context. She's probably more talking about the misogynistic neckbeards who were against Jodie simply because of the fact that she was a woman. And well before her first episode had even aired. Those are the ones that, yes, I agree, are assholes, and that's galling. But after her episodes aired and the season, everyone agreed the season was shit, and the ratings are shit, it doesn't have anything to do with her being a woman. I guarantee you, if you put a man in her place and had a male Doctor, it would still be shit, because the writing is shit. From top to bottom. All the women of Doctor Who are part of the movement paving the way to this point, and they know how important they are to their fans. For us, it's a national institution. It's part of our culture, Gillen said. It's ingrained in people in such a way that, I don't know, everyone knows who Elvis is in America. I suppose something like that. It's really part of our DNA at this point. And so it's still mind-blowing to me that I was even a part of it. I can't believe that happened still, and it's such an honor. Their roles in Doctor Who are not to be taken lightly, as they understand. Beyond adoration and fame and a place among these utterly iconic characters and creations, the women of Doctor Who are an inspiration to a generation of girls who get to grow up and have visible female heroes and villains. Can't argue with that. The reaction I get from younger female fans is incredibly embracing. I think that they've embraced Missy's power and the fact that she could just be this wonderful character that kids really live in all of her colors and not be labeled mad because she's funny or mad because she's clever or mad because she's challenging and powerful, Gomez said. I think she may be a great role model for younger women coming up, and that we don't have to be what our grandmothers had to be or what past generations of women had to be. We can have thicker waists and fuller figures, and things have changed, and for the better, and we get to be more comfortable in all our many different shapes and sizes. And I think that's what I take most out of my reign as the master, was that I was able to kind of break the mold a little bit. I think the younger female fans really recognized that and appreciated it, and appreciated her fine acting skills as well. And perhaps just as importantly, all fans get women to look up to across the gender spectrum in a way they never have before. Gomez sees this not only as a performer, but as a mother of a young son. It's interesting because my son is 10, and I feel like I'm possibly one of the last members of the generation where there really was a sort of gender-specific lineation, Gomez explained. And now I notice with my son and his friends, and at school, boys can wear pink and it's okay, right? The world has changed, and it certainly feels like for the better in terms of gender equality and just be who you need to be. And the kids of today, this generation coming up, they don't bat an eyelid. If you look different or sound different, there seems to be a lot more inclusiveness. That's what I've witnessed, certainly from my son and his friends. The future is in good hands and in two very good hearts. I'm not going to say anything else on this because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Next article. Doctor Who's universe is so much bigger now for season 13 and beyond. Fuck me. Okay, there definitely is going to be spoilers in this for Timeless Child, obviously. When Chibi took over Doctor Who in season 11, the series underwent something of a hard reboot with a new doctor, new companions, and a new attitude. But it also abandoned the season-long arc, a hallmark of the series since its return to TV in 2006, which is why it fucking sucked. With season 12, the show returned to the multi-episode arc with a vengeance. I would think you would have learned that this was, suck balls from when Moffat did it at the beginning of season 7. Each episode was unto itself, and they were not connected in any way, and just complete garbage. The series premiere two-parter kicked off one with the Master's mysterious destruction of Gallifrey over the Timeless Child, and Captain Jack Harkness arrived halfway through the season with the other to introduce the lone Cyberman. Still don't have any explanation as to how the Master got there in the first place, because the Doctor hadn't even gotten there yet, and he's the one that set it up in that place in the fucking first place. You would think if anybody was going to get there first, it would be the Doctor, not the Master. No reason why he wanted to destroy it, or how he was even able to do it on his own, considering that the Time Lords are heavily armed and could have taken him out in one fell swoop. And Jack, precious Jack. It's Harkness, not Harness. Jesus Christ! I love you, Jack. I truly do. And I love seeing you wherever and whenever you are. But to shoehorn you into an episode for fan service, you're worth a lot more than that. But Doctor Who season 12 finale, in which both of these stories came together, revealed the plan was far more ambitious, as the arc's denouement flipped the Doctor's origin story entirely backward. When the Doctor showed up on Earth in the reboot of Doctor Who season 1, he was introduced to audiences as the last of the Time Lords. In The Timeless Children, the backstory reverses it. She's now the first of the Time Lords. Yeah, go fuck right the fuck off. The origin of her entire people. Except, she's not one of them now, remember? She's not even fucking Gallifreyan anymore! In short, the Time Lord's grand origin story was derived from the abuse of one small child. And you're touting that like that's a good thing. Who the fuck are you people? In doing this, the show added a giant opening to fill in the blanks. It opens up the show for both Chibnall in season 13 and for those who come after. With the companions also sent home, perhaps for good, the show has permitted itself to go anywhere next, and the series is better for it. Well, the series is definitely better for the companions being gone because they didn't do shit anyway. While certain sections of Doctor Who fandom doubtless fell into hysterics, Chibnall's choice is derived in plot arcs from classic Who. Most of the finale's twists were taken directly from Time Lord lore. Actually, no, they're not. Laid out in the original Doctor Who series 14 episode The Deadly Assassin, 1976. It also drew in an often overlooked continuity error that occurred in series 13's The Brain of Morbius, 1976, where several faces of the Doctor appear that do not match any known regenerations, although it's already been proven that those faces didn't belong to the Doctor, fucktard. They belonged to Morbius. They were regenerations of Morbius, not the Doctor. When the Doctor looked at the faces, he didn't recognize them. They weren't his. Multiple sources have already confirmed this, but in Chibnall's hands, they become the basis of a universal expansion. The Doctor's established set of 12 regenerations is merely one of many. Perhaps thousands of lifetimes lived, all redacted and forgotten, just waiting to be backfilled. Fuck me. The sheer wealth of wide open space this creates within the show's already established parameters is mind-boggling. Simply defining how far this expansion goes and how many sets of 12 there are of the Doctor's life. Why are you speaking in sets of 12? You've just established that in the Timeless Children, he has no sets. He can regenerate indefinitely. So you don't really have sets of 12 anyway. Now you just be stupid. Could take multiple seasons, let alone introduce a backlog of characters from the redacted parts. Does the show actually bring back those Morbius doctors from the 70s one by one? Yeah, I fucking doubt it. There were 8 shown altogether at the time, and yeah, they were all faces of Morbius. This next season grouped them to create a new set of 12, one that includes Joe Martin's Ruth Doctor. God. Consider what happens if those faces aren't all from a single previous set, but the doctors come from different randomized sets of 12. Each could be their own season-long arc in that case. Oh, what? What? You want to talk about confusing? There's a reason why past showrunners didn't fuck with canon. And this is why. Filling in these new sets of 12 would be like a giant 3D galactic bingo cube. Gotta catch 'em all would suddenly apply to an entirely new franchise. Funko Pops would have a field day. Fuck. Yeah, he's got millions and millions of faces. Guess what? We no longer give a shit. But the expansion doesn't just open up the Doctor to brand new stories and actors. It also tells fans a lot about the rest of the Time Lords. Previous showrunner Stephen Moffat famously threw out the 12 regeneration rule during his final years when the show reached the cap, but needed to keep going. Chibnall has now reinstated it for everyone except the Doctor. That means the Master only has a few regenerations left. For example, as Sacha Dhawan marks the 8th incarnation of the Doctor. Was that actually said in show? Or are you just guessing? I don't know. I didn't actually watch the episode myself, but wouldn't you agree that Moffat probably shouldn't have done that in the first place? By getting regenerations from the Time Lords? I mean, honestly, that's why Chibnall's done what he's done. Because Stephen Moffat paved the way for him to do so by fucking shit up. Not that anyone's ready to see the Master go quietly into that good night yet, but it changes the game that he will eventually end, and the Doctor will keep going, lonelier than ever. Oh my God, please let the show go already. But more critically, regenerating wasn't originally part of who these people were. The indigenous race of the Gallifrey, the Shobogans, genetically engineered this into their ruling classes. That means regeneration is something other races can also splice into their genetic code, given the right technology. But the Time Lords were the only ones, they were so far advanced, they were the only ones that had the ability. And that's not how they got regeneration. They looked into the Untempered Schism. When the children went to the Time Lord Academy, they looked into the Untempered Schism. That's the exposure to the vortex is what gave them regeneration ability. That's not just canon from New Who. That goes all the way back. Today, the Master is combining Cybermen and Time Lords into some generally Natalie dressed cyber masters. Tomorrow, who could be picking up the ability? Can anyone imagine what would happen if Davros got his hands on this? Regenerating Daleks is almost as terrifying as the first time one finally figured out how to go up a flight of stairs. If a whole bunch of races suddenly got the ability to regenerate, it would ruin everything that makes the Doctor the Doctor. It would just... What's the point? Then there's this. The Doctor's not a Time Lord at all. She was not born with Shibogan. Her ability to produce that sweet regeneration energy is all natural. All natural. In short, she comes from a completely different alien race altogether. Who are the Doctor's real people? Where are they? The TARDIS has been to the ends of time and the deepest reaches of space. Have they been quietly there the whole time, watching her? Are they silently regenerating in secret under the very noses of the egotistically self-styled Time Lords? Why? Just why? The Doctor is from Gallifrey. Season 12 ended on a cliffhanger. The Doctor is locked away for something that happened during her redacted years, and the companions are seemingly home on Earth for good. It's a sign that though fans got answers, the story's not ended. No, not answers. Just bullshit. That makes no sense. Chibnall has given us not just a season-long arc, but one that could consume the rest of its tenure if he were to let it. The Doctor's story will continue, but all her past unfolds as well. Doctor Who may be 57 years old, but it's only just begun anew. Oh, my God. My God. Ah! Pretty sure this is the last article. Yeah. Doctor Who Season 12 finale answers the oldest question. Who is the Doctor? Yeah, the question that it should never be answered in the fucking first place. The title of the longest running science fiction show ever is also a question without a question mark. Back in the Matt Smith 11th Doctor era of Doctor Who, that phrase, Doctor Who, was metafictionally established as the first question, the oldest question in the universe that must never be answered, hidden in plain sight. But now, 57 long years of very complicated canon and 2 incarnations of the Doctor later, Doctor Who has finally answered its most basic question. Who the heck is the Doctor, anyway? It's not something that was ever meant to be answered, you fucks! In the season 12 finale of The Timeless Children, the Doctor, Jodie Whittaker's oldest nemesis, the Master, Sasha Dewan, reveals a huge secret about her past, one that gives the most famous time traveler of them all a brand new origin story. Or should I say an origin story, just period, because she was never supposed to have an actual, fully fleshed out origin story. It's supposed to be ambiguous for a reason. Like many Doctor Who season finales before it, The Timeless Children is jam-packed with more stuff than the episode could possibly address, and the biggest revelations are without a doubt directly connected to a brand new backstory for the titular character. Prior to this season, for the most part, Who canon always floated the idea that the various incarnations of the Doctor began with William Hartnell's first Doctor in the original version of the show in 1963, starting with an unearthly child. And other than the 4th Doctor episode, The Brain of Morbius, once again, not his faces, they belong to Morbius. Secret versions of the Doctor that predated William Hartnell simply didn't exist. In fact, in the final Peter Capaldi episode, Twice Upon a Time, the 12th Doctor made peace with his original face and even encouraged the first Doctor's own regeneration, right before eventually becoming Jodie Whittaker's 13th Time Lord. So, yeah. Chibnall just directly contradicted himself. It's hard to believe that was only 2 seasons ago, because now not only is William Hartnell's first Doctor no longer the first Doctor, yes, he is. Yes, he is. But the Doctor themselves is officially the very first Time Lord ever. Not only that, but there was a whole cycle of regenerations prior to what we've been aware of for the past 57 years of Who canon. Oh my god. You can't just become a Time Lord simply because you have the ability to regenerate. You also have to go through the Academy. That's just how it fucking works. Some of this, however, isn't exactly news, but instead a very detailed explanation of what we already learned in episode 5 of this season, Fugitive of the Judoon. In that episode, we met a mysterious new version of the Doctor, Jo Martin, who had disguised herself with a chameleon arch and was living as a human named Ruth. She had her memories briefly repressed as to who she really was, but now we know who the Ruth Doctor was, just one of many regenerations the Doctor had before memory was erased by the Time Lords, and at some point, we don't know when, turned into William Hartnell's first Doctor. During this time, the Doctor was part of something called the Division, which operated outside the Time Lord rules of interfering with the affairs of other planets. In essence, the secret life of the Doctor was similar philosophically to why the original Doctor stole a TARDIS and left Gallifrey, thus embarking on the journey of the Doctor we've always known. Again, that makes no sense. None. She literally says that she remembers the TARDIS being a police public call box. But it didn't start being a police public call box until William Hartnell's version of the Doctor used that as a chameleon circuit. None of what she says makes sense. At all. And then the whole division shit? Okay, look. The Time Lords were stuffy senators that never dabbled in anything. All they did was watch and observe and make sure that time went the way it was supposed to go. The Doctor was different because he wanted to meddle, because he wanted to change things, because he wanted to go to different worlds and different planets and meet different species and save people. That is what set him apart from everybody else. Now you're saying that he was just like this other group, that the reason why he was the way he was is because he was in this group? No. He was set apart because he was different. A middling Time Lord at best, because of his attitudes, and that is the reason why he stole that TARDIS, took his granddaughter, and left, because he didn't like the way that they did things, he didn't like their rules. This is what helps us to identify with the Doctor as a person. Weirdly, this was hinted at in the aforementioned crazy 4th Doctor episode, The Brain of Morbius, in which various past faces of the Doctor were shown to be buried in their memory. Wrong! See these here? Not Dr. Faces. These are faces that belong to Morbius. The Time Lord Morbius. Not the fucking Doctor. And toward the end of The Timeless Children, when the Doctor weaponizes all her Doctor's memories against the Matrix, we briefly see the faces of the Morbius Doctors, which seems to establish that yes, a perceived mistake in old school 70s canon is now pretty much the basis for the entire new premise. Because Chibnall's a fucking ridiculous idiot. Chibnall, having been a fan for just as long as Moffat, you would think would know that the truth behind this and not use it. He's picking apart shit that isn't even true. However, in the new episode, the Doctor initially rejects this new info, ranting, "I know my life, I remember growing up. The Master assures her all that happened, it just wasn't your first life." By this, he means it wasn't her first cycle of 12 regenerations, something the Master explains was artificially built in by the earliest Time Lords, who weren't actually Time Lords. Huh? She remembers growing up, so what, they just downloaded a bunch of false memories into her head to make her believe she was a child once? Because you can't regenerate into a child unless you're already a child. You don't go from having a previous set of 12 and being an adult and then regenerating back into a child. I don't think it works like that. And that's because there's a much bigger reveal than the Doctor just having had a whole separate set of lives before the series even began in 1963. No, the deeper revelation of the entire episode is that the basic essence of the Time Lord's physiology, the whole ability to regenerate into new bodies, was actually stolen from a singular, mysterious alien being, a stranded child rescued by an explorer named Tecteun. Before they were ever called Time Lords, the natives of Gallifrey were known as Shibogans. This episode explains that the Shibogans only rebranded themselves as Time Lords after incorporating the regeneration ability into the genetic code of all future generations. And the person they stole that genetic code from was a forgotten version of the Doctor, the Timeless Child. No. Abso-fucking-lutely not. It's bad enough that you guys are rallying behind this race of people who, physically, genetically, and emotionally abuse this poor child over and over and over and over, murdering her, him, whatever, until they could get what they wanted. All because you want her to be a girl? You're breaking canon because you want her to be a girl. Honestly, you already got what you wanted by turning the 13th Doctor into a woman. Really? So what exactly did the Doctor do during that entire period of time after being the Timeless Child, but before having their memory erased and turned into William Hartnell? The bottom line is we don't know exactly how many regenerations the Doctor had before becoming the classic version. But it's pretty damn clear that Jo Martin, Ruth Doctor, obviously comes from that gap. No, she doesn't. No, she fucking doesn't. And even though the Doctor does get a mind chat with the Ruth Doctor here, the answers aren't going to be found in the database known as the Matrix. When the Doctor and the Master inhabit the Matrix in this episode, the Master knows that the entire sections have been redacted and replaced with a more generic memory. These were the Brendan scenes from the previous episode, watered-down versions of the Doctor's time working for the Division. Yeah, I never really could understand what the whole Brendan thing was. It was like her memories, but not as a Time Lord, as a human, to make it easier for and more palatable for her to understand. Is that what you're trying to say? It felt like they were just shoehorned in there and made zero sense within the context of the rest of the episode. Speaking of the Time Lord Matrix, on almost every single level, The Timeless Children is a direct sequel to the fourth Doctor Tom Baker story, The Deadly Assassin. Airing after The Brain of Morbius, but in the same year, this 1976 serial is where almost all of our previous assumptions about Time Lord mythology came from originally. And as in The Timeless Children, that serial featured the Doctor and the Master squaring off in the Matrix. Plus, the Master also mentions assassinating presidents and the location of the Panopticon, all events and places established in The Deadly Assassin. In fact, the entire 12th regeneration rule comes from The Deadly Assassin 2. Yeah, okay, that's great. So it's been established. Why would they fuck it up one episode later with The Brain of Morbius? That makes no sense whatsoever. They're not going to establish one thing in one episode and then the next take a curve. That don't make no fucking sense. The Timeless Children also solves the comment made by the remnants about the Timeless Child way back in 2018 in the season 11 episode, The Ghost Monument, when the 13th Doctor was just getting started. Why those flying eagle scraps of paper were aware of the great lie perpetrated by the Time Lords is unclear, Because why would the Time Lords tell them? Like, it makes no sense. Nor is it clear how many other alien species may or may not be aware of this grand deception. If the Doctor doesn't fucking know about it, why would the Time Lords tell anybody else? You fucking kidding me? Will future seasons of the Doctor reveal more about these missing pieces of faux Time Lord history? What about other Doctors? And how is the Doctor going to get out of this Jejun prison? All these questions are tantalizing, but there are good bets to be made that future Who seasons will tackle each one in turn. Plus, we're almost certainly seeing Jo Martin's Doctor again at some point. That said, perhaps the most interesting revelation in the Timeless Children was simply the fact that the Doctor's origin is now even more mysterious than it was before. This is a show about time travel, meaning that the past is often just as vital as the future. And now we don't actually even know which alien race the Doctor / the Timeless Child really belongs to. She was an orphan, possibly from another dimension, and already had the ability to regenerate. All the Time Lords copied her. So we may have found out more about who the Doctor is, but bizarrely we no longer know what she is. The show isn't going to rebrand as Doctor What, but considering the massive fake out from the Time Lords, maybe it should. Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. Doctor What? This is why you're not supposed to answer those questions. This is why the Doctor's origins in its entirety is supposed to be ambiguous at best. Always a mystery. You might get tiny little morsels here and there, but you never get direct answers, and you're not supposed to. Well, those are the articles I came up with so far. I mean, I know we're probably not going to get any newer stuff until closer to the Christmas special. So, and there is very little information about season 13 at this point. The only reason they were able to air the Christmas special when they hoped is because fortuitously they managed to film that before the lockdown. So that was already in the can and out the way. They filmed it kind of right alongside filming season 12. Season 13 right now is in pre-production. I think that they're really just writing scripts at this point, but there's no really telling when they'll go to set and film because of coronavirus stuff. So we may not get new Doctor Who till next year, and not beginning of next year either. Maybe later on. Not that it would matter at this point, considering the show has gone to fucking hell anyway. So, yeah, that's about it for the articles. If you have any comments, don't forget, if you have any opinions or anything, that's what the comment section is for, but just keep it civil. Okay? And if you want to help me keep on keeping on, find me on social media. I posted the links to my Patreon, Twitter, Instagram down in the description. Hit me up on there if you like. I still have some cool stuff on Patreon that you can get. Yeah, just a smidge. So I will be back when I can with more Doctor Who stuff. I think I'm going to focus most of my attention on Time Lord Victorious, the multi-platform Doctor Who story. I'm expecting the first books to come in that I've already pre-ordered. Should come in October, so I will probably review those once I read them. And there's also a brand new Big Finish audio with David Tennant and Tom Baker as 10 and 4, so that should be awesome too. We will review that as well. So I will see you guys later, my friends. Peace out.
Good night.